Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 104 of the Hammer Territory podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Thursday evening, and I'm joined once again by Stephen Tolbert, back-to-back podcast. Brad and Stephen, hello, sir. How are you?
Brad, we went like 6 months without doing a podcast together, and now we've done 2 in 2 days.
That's right. This one's a little bit, it's not necessarily an emergency podcast, but we should have done a podcast after the news that we'll talk about today. The Braves have a hitting coach now, which is, of course, what the main topic is going to be on this show. We should also say, at the top of the episode, we are part of the Foul Territory network of podcasts. Go ahead and subscribe if you're new to the podcast and tell your friends about the show. We're on Apple, we're on Spotify, we're on YouTube if you want to see me and Stephen and our shining faces. And we definitely appreciate you being here. But yeah, the Braves made a hire today. And in fact, the guy they hired is named Tim Hyers, which is interesting. I had to do a radio thing this afternoon and answer a question about that, and I got mixed up because I said hire too many times in different directions. So that will be happening, I'm sure, on this podcast. But okay, Steven, we'll dive into this. But former major leaguer, local product in some respects. What did you make of this? And we'll kind of dive into the ins and outs of who Tim Hyers is and whether this is a good idea or not.
Yeah, so Sean and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, that whenever the new hitting coach got announced, it would be one of these where we talk about it, we talk about who he is and what he's done, and then after that, like it's like a 4-month waiting period just to see if anything's different. Like, it's very, hitting coaches are, they don't really publicly come out and talk about what they're going to teach or philosophy. It's very difficult to have any sort of reasoned analysis about this guy until we see exactly how the offense looks, if it looks any different at all. He's obviously been with the Rangers the last few years, and the Rangers have ironically done a similar thing to the Braves, where they had this incredible offense in 2023. Offense was down in 2024, which is kind of a league-wide thing. If you look at league-wide numbers for 2023 and 2024, that's a pretty common story across multiple teams. So yeah, it's very interesting. I think everybody was online today kind of trying to Google him and look up some clips, and there's some interviews out there that he's done about stuff that he believes in, stuff about pitch selection that I was really hyped up about. I think a lot of the Braves' problem has been wrapped up in pitch selection and which pitches they swing at and which pitches they don't. And he talked quite a bit about that. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, it's just one of those positions that it's just tough. It's really tough to put anything solid down until we get to the 2025 season and we see if anything's different. If so, what's different? A lot of it's player driven, who's on your roster. So it's tough. It's tough to have a strong opinion, but they were going to hire somebody who obviously believed in what they believed in, and it seems like that's what they did.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, this is something that's actually even across sports, but assistant coaches, which is essentially what this is, they're not going to talk very often. They're not going to be available to the media very often. You kind of have to just glean what you can, at least publicly. I cover other sports, and like sometimes we get to talk to somebody, but as far as like public stuff that everyone can see, it's very limited. And this is one where, there was a video that you just referenced, and I think I shared it. I think Scott did too, about, Hyers did it was like a 2.5-minute clip where he's talking about his philosophy and, like you said, pitch selection. I think the quote that you shared was, "You're only as good as the pitch that you swing at." That was the money quote that we all kind of enjoyed. But he did say in that even in that clip, and again, this is one clip, but he's talking about how there's no secret sauce to hitting or quick fix. Like, it's all about process. And I like that kind of stuff, like having a plan, all those things. But and look, you mentioned the parallel between the Rangers and the Braves, something I wanted to say, and let's just do it now. Like, none of us thought Kevin Zeitzer was bad at his job. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's a proven commodity. Like, hitting coaches are not famous. Like, that's something else I want to say out loud. Like, no matter who they hired, it was going to be like, all right, we kind of heard of this guy because we're sickos. But like, fans don't know who this guy is. They didn't know who Kevin Zeitzer was unless he was on the Braves staff. That's how you got to get to know who guys are. They're on the Braves. And the parallels are there. Like, he does have a great resume, which is all you can really ask for from our standpoint. He, like you said, was with the Rangers, won the World Series there. They were really good offensively under his tutelage. Before that, he was with the Red Sox. And the numbers were incredible with the Red Sox. Like, some of that's personnel, all of this stuff is personnel based too. Like, you have to have the players, but I think it was Toscano, somebody who wrote the write-up, pulled some of these numbers. The Red Sox were the best offense in baseball, essentially, for his 4-year tenure as the hitting coach in Boston. Like, how much of the credit does he deserve for that? We have no idea. We can't possibly say that. And it's kind of the same thing on the other side of Kevin Seitzer, where Kevin Seitzer presided over some really good offenses. So it's like he's a buffoon. It's just what it is. And I think the baseline is basically this is a guy that is about as accomplished as a guy that's going to be available for the hire. And that's kind of all we know at this point in time. It sounds crazy to talk about it this way, but it really is like, okay, is he qualified? Yes. Does he have a resume that's impressive? Yes. Does he want to be here? Obviously. He wasn't fired by Texas. He's choosing to leave Texas to go to Atlanta. So he wants the job, and here we are.
Yeah, I mean, you got to remember those, those Boston teams. That was like the Mookie Betts, Xander Bogaerts teams.
Mm-hmm.
The Texas teams have obviously been the Corey Seager, Adolis Garcia teams. Like it's player driven. Like hitting is player driven. Like, and this is the other thing that we got some pushback on when we talked about Seitzer being fired was hitting coaches are not in a silo teaching exactly what they want to teach versus what hitting philosophy and hitting approach and all that stuff comes down from the organization in 2024.
Yep.
So it's not just, hey, we're going to hire a hitting coach and then whatever he teaches, that's now our new organizational philosophy. That's not how it works. Alex, this is the first time Alex has hired a hitting coach, which is obviously notable. He inherited Seitzer. Seitzer was actually there before him, along with Snit. And so this is the first time he's hired a hitting coach with the Braves. And, they have an organizational philosophy of how they want guys to approach hitting, and they hire guys who teach that philosophy. And this is, I think, a situation where, Seitzer his voice had just gotten a little stale, and they wanted a new voice to come in and maybe, shake some things loose and maybe get a little bit more out of guys. But when Seitzer got fired, we did wonder if this is going to be like an organizational change, if they were going to go get something completely different, or if they just wanted a new messenger for the same message. And I do think it's the latter. I think it's B. I think, he's come in, he's being brought in to reinforce what they've been teaching, but just in a different voice and maybe in a slightly different way, and maybe with a slightly different emphasis. Maybe pitch selection becomes the thing he focuses on, which I would love. But yeah, it's just going to be tough to tell until we get to the season.
I want to dig in a little bit more on that topic, actually, about the organizational factors here in a second. But first, a word from our partners at Foul Territory.
We get it. Mornings are nuts. No time for breakfast, but you need to get your day started right.
What if a delicious, nutritious meal could be ready in seconds? Support for Foul Territory is brought to you by Huel, the world's #1 complete nutrition brand. With over 400 million meals sold worldwide, Huel is trusted by millions of people looking to fuel their days with convenient, complete nutrition. Try it for yourself with this exclusive FT offer. 15% off with the code FOUL at Huel.com.
We're all about saving time, but we get hangry, like a lot. I recently fell in love with the Huel Ultimate Super Greens Powder, which is a perfect blend of 91 vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients. I also love their complete nutrition bars, and those hot and savory pouches are fire too.
FT fam, give it a shot. Get 15% off with the code FOUL at HUEL.com. Unlock a healthier, easier way to eat with Huel. Nutritionally complete meals in minutes so you can focus on what really matters.
All right, Stephen, I think it's a good point you're bringing up about how it's all correlated and connected. And we will never know how much, even with Seitzer, we use Seitzer's example, how much of it was he disagreed with something in the organization. It's the same thing as managing. Snit is the public face, so any tactical decision gets put on Snit. When you and I know, and I think we'll realize this now, pitching decisions in particular, lineup construction, is oftentimes, at the very least, a process that is corroboration or collaboration, I should say, with the front office. So yes, Alex is very quick to always say, Snit's the guy. Once the game starts, Snit's the guy. He's in charge. But we all know that everything is organizational at this point in baseball. It's the old way of doing things where the buck stops at the manager and the coaching staff. That's not really the case anymore. And we can't know what's going to happen here. But I thought it was interesting, actually, to this point. Mark Bowman reported today that Hyers was actually interested in joining the Braves organization as a minor league hitting guy in 2017 before he went to Houston. Before he went to Boston. And then that just didn't happen because of the copy fallout and all that craziness. That was pre-Alex. And also, he actually worked tangentially under Alex. He was with the Dodgers when Alex was there. So I don't know how close they are. There's no way of knowing that until Alex says they are. I'm sure someone in Atlanta will get an interview with Hyers, and I wish we could read that now before we do this podcast. That will probably happen. But there's a lot of things here where Alex. I have no idea that that's why he got hired. He's also, again, he's from here. He's an Atlanta area native. I think he grew up in Newton County, so his family's here from what I could find out today. So like, there's a lot of connection with him and the organization. And again, he is proactively choosing. And then I'll ask you this. Is it encouraging to you, like it is to me, that the Braves were able, and we said this when it happened, but like they were able to get a guy who was not fired, who was probably in demand. Like clearly Hyers probably just was like, all right, this is the best shot I can possibly get. Look at this lineup. And maybe he wanted to move home too, but like that encourages me that they didn't have to go out and find somebody that was like, just sitting around the couch.
Yeah, like a AAA guy or even like out of college or something. Like they were able to go get a guy that's got tons of success as being a major league hitting coach. And we said it at the time that Seitzer was let go, that there would be highly qualified, highly talented people that were interested in this job because of people love working for the Atlanta Braves just across baseball. It's a model organization in a lot of ways for players, for coaches, for front office people. They love it. Obviously this guy's from Georgia, so I'm sure that mattered a lot, but maybe more than any of that, the Braves just have a ton of offensive talent that had a lot of underperformance last year. And this guy could come in and look like a genius without having to do much. I mean, he could just sit back and watch the regression happen to the positive. And he looks like a genius. So I'm not surprised they were able to hire somebody of this caliber with this much success. It is encouraging. It does mean kind of what we thought it meant, that this is a highly coveted job. I do think the fact that the Rangers didn't have a great year in 24. I'm sure, the Rangers might be in a similar situation where they maybe want a different voice. I don't know. He wasn't fired, but, so that is important. He had a job. He left a job to come here. He wasn't on the free agent market, so to speak. But so that does matter and it is encouraging, but I don't think the messaging is going to be that different. Like I know there are going to be people that think he's going to come in and maybe, completely redo the offense. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think they're massively changing their philosophy. Alex has had the same hitting philosophy when he was with Toronto, when he was with LA. Like you said, this guy was with him in LA since he's been in Atlanta. Like they're not changing it after one bad year with a ton of injuries and a ton of underperformance. Like they're just not going to do that. And so it's just a new voice for the same message. When we get to the season, we will be able to see if there's any special emphasis, if maybe they do take a few more walks because they're better at pitch selection. We'll see. Again, you don't really know how much a hitting coach. I mean, once these guys get to the majors,
actually, it's just I was saying the same thing. It's like, even if they don't perfectly align, and look, I'm sure he'll have the opportunity to put his stamp on things, as much as we totally agree that this is not going to just change the entire offense. Maybe with certain players, the messaging will get through. Like that kind of stuff can really help. And, there's a lot of talk today about, can he get through to Jared Kelenic? Can he get through to Sean? Can he fix Sean Murphy? Like the guys who struggled will, inevitably the new hitting coach will get credited to some degree if those guys figure it out this year. And we'll never know if that was the reason or not. We just can't know that. But you're right. Maybe it's a few more walks. Last year, of course, in addition to everything else that changed offensively, they walked less and struck out more. And that's a very obvious thing to look at, and maybe they can fix that. But again, personnel based. I don't think that suddenly Ozzie Albies and Michael Harris are going to be this incredibly patient hitters. That's not who those guys are. Can they get better at that? Absolutely. But they're not going to turn into Juan Soto because they have a new hitting coach. So there's that part of this. And but yeah, I think if you wanted an organizational change in hitting approach, you have to change a lot of things in the organization. You can't just change the hitting coach. You have to change the way you develop guys in the minors. It begins lower in the system. Like you have to have an entirely almost. I don't want to say that you have to get rid of Alex, but like almost an entire silo of offerings under Alex would have to change if you wanted a full scale organizational change, and that's just not going to happen. So they're changing this one guy, and we'll see. And
honestly, you might have to if you wanted that, you really might have to get rid of it. Like it might be that ingrained,
which isn't going to happen. That's not going to happen.
Which is of course never going to happen. So, no. But that's how ingrained the front office is into this stuff now. Is that You don't just change the hitting coach and then change everything about your offense like that. It just doesn't happen.
It starts
that
in the
way.
minors. I'm telling you, like,
Yeah.
obviously this seems obvious to some or simple, but you're preaching the same thing in single A that you are at the major league level to some degree. You want to develop guys the way you want them to see it. Like maybe pitching is a little bit more obvious in this way because teams have, I would say, probably a bigger swath of approach on the pitching side, but everything is organizational all the way down to the minors and so on and so on.
Even before it gets to the minor, like it's based, that stuff is based on who you draft, who you scout.
Yeah.
Like it is literally top to bottom. You would have to change everything about the organization because Alex has been here for 7 years now. Like his fingerprints are all over this organization, top to bottom, especially after they lost Dana Brown to Houston and he had to kind of redo the scouting department. Like, yeah, you're exactly right. You can't just change the hitting coach and expect that to be the change. Like it would have to be an entire organizational turnover, which they were never going to do after 1 year with a lot of fluky stuff that happened, if we're being honest.
Yeah. Even as we've said, and I was less strong than I know Scott was, but none of us were like, you have to fire Kevin Seitzer. It was just kind of, I thought it might happen and it was understandable if they did that. But even then we all said, like, in addition to the underperformance and stuff, they also got unlucky this year, both with injuries and batted ball stuff. Like everything was thrown into the same formula. One more thing before we move on this, the Braves have, at least when they moved on from Seitzer and multiple coaches, they did say to multiple of the beat guys, they were not going to hire a catching coordinator. That job was going to be put away because it was just created for Sal, but they were planning on hiring a hitting coach and a number 2, an assistant basically. And they did not announce that they did that today. Maybe they have, and we just don't know it yet. Maybe they wanted to talk to Hyers about who he might want to work under him. I just want to at least note that there could be a number 2 hire coming. And also wanted to ask you, because we talked about it offline, it was a little bit odd the way they announced this. Like they didn't do the rollout that they normally do, which you and I both found at least interesting. I'm not sure what it means, but it was just kind of interesting.
Yeah, it was very weird. It was a very terse, very short tweet. It was like a 3-line tweet. Typically when the Braves add somebody significant to either the roster or to the coaching staff, I mean, Braves fans know
the box.
The blue square is kind of famous now for all the extensions they signed. But they send out this blue square that's got 1,000 words of biographical information and qualifications and former stops and success and all that stuff. And I look back last year when they added 3 coaches to the roster, and just because I just wanted to see, make sure I wasn't going crazy. And yeah, they did the same thing. They had the big blue square. They had tons of, biographical information about each guy. And then today, when they announced this, there was nothing. It was just a 3-line tweet that we hired Tim Hyers to be the next batting coach. And that was it. And it was very weird. It was very strange. I don't know if, you and I were speculating. I don't know if they were about to they were afraid it was about to leak out. And so they wanted to get something out quick. I don't know if they're going to save all the biographical stuff for when they hire the second guy and maybe announce them all. But that was a very strange rollout and a big departure from what they do usually when somebody significant gets added to the team.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. It's just one of those things that the sickos like us noticed probably, and it
bothers our brains. Like we can't not say it.
It just didn't sit right. But they do have an open job under him again. Like obviously he'll get even now. Like if you polled even the diehard Braves fans, do they even know the name of the number 2 hitting coach that they just fired? I don't think people even know who that is. So it's the number 1 guys to get the attention. It is what it is. And that's going to be Hyers. But yeah, we can leave it there for now. Anything else you want to add on our new guy, Tim Hyers, our best friend, who's going to?
It's funny when I read that line about you're only as good as the pitches you swing at. The first thing I thought of was like Orlando Arcia, like listening to that tweet and like slowly like lowering his head, or Ozzy Albies reading that tweet and be like, "Damn it, like he's right." Because
our streak of our picking on Orlando in every podcast continues, which is sorry,
like that, because that is the thing I'm going to be interested to see is, if that improves at all with any of these. I mean, again, so much of it is player based, but like if there's one thing I'm looking forward to for next year in this new hire is to see if they are better at pitch selection and their approach they take to the plate, especially some of the guys that struggle with it like unbelievably bad. And some of these guys, Orlando might not even be the starting shortstop next year, so it might not matter at all. But that's the thing I am probably most interested in about this hire.
I agree, and between it's that and it's also I joked about it earlier, but it's not going to be a joke. The thing that he'll get the most attention for is guys like Kelnick, guys like Murphy, who had really bad years. Like, Matt Olson didn't have a great year, but like he kind of fixed it along the way and was still pretty good, even though it's been like framed as if he was terrible. He wasn't. He just wasn't as good as the year before, all those things. But the guys who were like the projects and the guys who were reclamations from the previous year will be the spotlight for the new hitting coach. Speaking of Matt Olson, before we get out of here on a shorter episode of the podcast, we've been going pretty long, and it's just kind of a pseudo-emergency podcast. But Matt Olson won the Fielding Bible Award today at first base, and it's not as famous as Gold Gloves, but Fielding Bible Awards I think are probably a little bit better as far as like their voting process and all that stuff at this point in time. And also, it's a full MLB award; it's not just National League. So essentially, they anointed Matt Olson as the best defensive first baseman in the majors this year, and I was a little surprised, but at the same time, he's won this thing. This is his fourth time that he's won it. And also which I didn't realize, he led all of baseball in defensive runs saved this year at first base. He was good. He was good above average too. And I will raise my hand, even though as the Matt Olson guy, we share a high school and all that. We didn't talk about his defense much this year at all. And I think it became last year, 2023, it was a topic because he struggled defensively, and he admitted that. It was like, whoa, this guy's supposed to be awesome defense, because he was really good in Oakland, and then he wasn't very good in 2023. And I was like, what's going on with Matt Olson? And this year, I don't know about you, but like I didn't give him the credit that I probably should have for his improvement. And obviously, getting a Fielding Bible Award win is not a small thing. It isn't like Gold Gloves in terms of like prestige, but when you're called the best defender at the position in the league for a full season, that's pretty interesting, I'd say.
Yeah, so two thoughts. First of all, first base defense is a bit like being the referee or an
That's true.
Good. And that's kind of what happened. We didn't talk about his defense a lot because there was not a lot of errors to talk. When you're a shortstop or a center fielder, you have these spectacular plays that you make, and you make highlight reels. First base defense very rarely makes any sort of highlight reel. You're just supposed to make all the plays over there. And so, the fact that his defense was not a topic of conversation, I think, was probably a positive and led to a lot of this. But you're right. We definitely did not give him the credit he deserved. Some of it was because he was having a down offensive year a lot of time, and it didn't feel right talking about how great his defense was when he wasn't hitting the way he wanted to hit.
At first base, to your point, because it's not its position. It's that if you're Orlando RC or Michael Harris, that's your carrying tool. Like your deep at first base, it's like just catch the ball, man.
Exactly. Yeah, you can't spend a lot of time talking about how great a guy's playing, first base defense when he's not hitting the way he wants to. So that's definitely part of it. But my other point is that the Fielding Bible Award probably should have the prestige that the Gold Glove has, because the Fielding Bible Award is actually much more accurately voted on. It's got a bunch of really smart people behind it. And like Francisco Lindor didn't get nominated for a Gold Glove at shortstop this year. And there's every year, like the Gold Glove Awards are just these like ridiculous, like Juan Soto is always a finalist somehow for a Gold Glove. Like it's a rather ridiculous process for that award, but it has all the cachet and all the prestige because I guess it sounds like it's just cool. Like Gold Glove is just a cool sounding name, and it's been around for a while.
And it's the oldest one. And wasn't there a year that Palmeiro won one in the 90s when he was like basically a DH all year long? Like it's become, granted, a lot of times it's right. A lot of times they get it right. Whoever wins it they get it right. But like there's so many outlier bad ones with Gold Gloves that it becomes like kind of a head scratcher to me. And Matt is a finalist for NL Gold Glove. They've not announced those yet. It'll be a couple weeks before they do. But yeah, I mean, I can already hear people like, you guys are nerds. I'm like, I understand, we are nerds. That's fine. I'll own that. But if I had a choice between winning a Fielding Bible Award as far as like what I trust more versus an NL Gold, like I would think this is one that I trust more. Also, while we're here, the only other guy who was recognized by the Braves was Schwellenbach, finished second at pitcher. He didn't win it, but he finished second in the voting. I wonder about Michael Harris. He just missed a bunch of time. Yeah. So I would guess that's probably the reason why he didn't get in the top 5 voting in center field. But Schwelle is going to win a lot. He's, by all accounts, and look, I'm not an expert at pitcher defense, but apparently he's really, really good by all accounts, and he always has been. So that's also, former shortstop, all those things.
And that's one of those things that, like, once you get a reputation for it early in your career, like Greg Maddux lived off this for a decade. Like, he was awesome, and he was actually really good. But like, once you get that reputation, because pitcher defense is like impossible to actually track. I mean, like the number.
I have a question for you on that front. I'm gonna a little trivia, Steven. How many Gold Gloves did Greg Maddux win? Because I know I just looked it up.
How many did he win? He won I swear to God, he won every single one for like a decade.
That's why I'm asking. It was
like,
won a lot.
was it
He
like
won a
8
lot.
or
I'll tell you that.
was it like 8?
No,
like 7
more.
or 8? Oh, it was more than that. Okay, like
how about
10?
this? It's crazy. He won 18
That's
Gold
crazy.
Gloves.
That's crazy.
Now, granted, the man pitched for 23 seasons, but I mean, I look. I love Greg Maddux. He's one of the best pitchers of all time. I kind of doubt he's the best fielding pitcher 18
Exactly.
years.
Yeah. That's reputation early, and just don't
Yeah.
make any stupid mistakes, and you'll win it. And that's another reason. Like I remember one year David Wright led the league in errors at third base, but he was a
And
monster
won-
at the
and won a
plate,
Gold
and he won a Gold Glove. And
Yeah. Well, that's always been the rep. Actually, before we move on, like there's always been a rep of like the big stars get Gold Gloves for even because they're hitting. Like it just doesn't make sense, but it's just like another way to give those guys another award. Some of the big bashers of the 90s, 2000s, that's a good one for Wright. So anyway, this is not a pile on the Gold Gloves thing, but I wanted to raise my hand and do a mea culpa about Matt's defense being really good this year and us not talking about it. So he was quite good. He was honored for it.
And I'll say this: if you want to know how good a defensive player somebody is, the worst thing to do is go look up like what defensive awards they've won. Like go look at we have real numbers now that you can go look up. So, you don't have to depend on how many Gold Gloves did a guy win. And I get for some of the older players, it's not easy to do, but for modern players, there's way better ways to track defense than awards.
We agree on that. All right, Stephen. Well, we can sign off early. I mean, this is we got to 25, 30 minutes. It wasn't like it was terribly short. The World Series begins tomorrow, as you and I record this on Thursday. We did a little bit of a mini preview, you and I, on our most recent show on Tuesday, so we could just already said that, but just flagging that. And also, because as soon as it ends, it becomes the true offseason. Like stuff can start happening. 5 days after the World Series is when really things can happen because guys can sign with other teams. So we're all prepping for that. It's going to be full-blown hot stove for a while. Obviously, Max Fried's number one topic around the Braves, but there was a little rumbling in Bowman's newsletter today where he thinks that Morton might not retire. So that's something to keep an eye on. We'll talk about it at some point. But just flagging that because once it starts and then once it ends, it's kind of like, all right, here we are.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, you have to wait till 5 days after the World Series for free agency to begin. But you remember last year they re-signed Joe Jimenez and
Pierce Johnson.
Pierce Johnson. Thank you, Pierce Johnson.
Yep.
In that 5-day window when you can talk to your own players. So
Correct.
We don't think AJ Minter is going to come back, but like if that was going to happen and it happened in those 5 days, it wouldn't be like a stunning development.
I think Minter and or Morton, like those guys. I mean, Max is not going to sign that period just for everybody. That's not happening. But if Minter or Morton were to sign, I would not be surprised. Yeah.
So we might not have to wait 5 days after the World Series. Now, technically, it could happen. I mean, you can still negotiate with your own players right now. Like technically,
right now, yeah,
they don't have to wait. But for some reason, a lot of teams do. I think MLB doesn't like deals being announced during the World Series, anyways. So, but yeah, it's coming. It's coming rapidly. World Series starts tomorrow. The most it's going to go is 7 games, obviously, and then after that, the offseason starts with haste.
Yeah, there's about 10 days. There's about 10 possible days of baseball between right now and when Game 7 would be of the World Series, and then after that, we're off and running. So, Stephen, thank you for being here, my friend. If anybody's a new listener, where can they find all of your brilliant musings on the Braves? And
Twitter, _outliers or X, whatever the hell it's called, and then Battery Power is where Scott and Sean and I still write. Brad used to be over there. Brad's got a million jobs. Brad, if people don't know, by the way, we're going to shout out the Atlanta Hawks who are 1-0.
Oh, no.
My man, Brad Rowland, covers the Hawks. So, obviously he's a very busy guy this time of year, but yeah, Battery Power is where we do a lot of writing, and then Be Outliers for X or Twitter. And then we'll be here for, everything that happens in the next ever, really. I mean, we're 12 months, it's 12.
We're never going away.
So.
Yep. Yeah, this is a Brad and Stephen heavy week on the podcast, but I can promise you Scott and Sean will be back soon enough. So please go ahead and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter, by the way, if you want to, at BT Rowland. We're also, as a show, on a lot of different social platforms. We're on Twitter at Hammer Territory. We're on Facebook at Hammer Territory. We are on Instagram at Hammer Territory. You can find us all those places. The biggest thing, though, is to subscribe, download, rate, review, click, all those, whatever you want to do to support the podcast. We definitely appreciate it. But barring news, probably be a few days before we come back with a podcast. But hey, News came today. So you never know what's going to happen. We'll react as soon as we possibly can. So stay tuned. We'll see everybody next time.